What if the answers to our most pressing modern dilemmas, those really tangled ethical knots we often find ourselves wrestling with, what if they aren't actually new? Like, what if the key to unlocking them has sort of been waiting for us in ideas centuries, even millennia old?
It's a really fascinating thought, isn't it?
Yeah.
That the complexities of, today's world might just be untangled by the, enduring wisdom of ancient thinkers.
Right.
That's precisely the journey we're embarking on today.
Exactly. Welcome, everyone, to a deep dive into a truly fascinating stack of sources. Our mission here is, pretty clear. We want to cut through some of the, let's say, density of philosophical thought and really pull out crucial, actionable insights.
Yeah, focusing on foundational Western thinkers.
Exactly. And this isn't just about theory, is it? It's more like a shortcut to applying some profound wisdom to your everyday decisions, personal or professional.
Absolutely. We've gathered a whole lot of material covering key philosophers, and we're connecting their ideas directly to ethical issues, real-world case studies, even current events.
Right.
The goal really is to show you not just what these thinkers believed, but how their principles can actually be put into practice, how to use these ideas.
So get ready for, hopefully, an engaging journey. We think it's packed with surprising facts and maybe some of those aha moments that show how philosophical principles can genuinely inform your understanding of the world and maybe empower your decision-making. Okay, let's unpack this.
Sounds good.
So when we talk about building a blueprint, like for personal integrity and ethical action, where else could we possibly start but with Socrates?
Right. Hard to avoid him.
He really laid the groundwork for what he called the ideal life, a life centered on, deep self-awareness, continuous improvement, and living by a set of core virtues.
Yeah, things like justice, prudence, temperance, courage.
Exactly. And all of it free from that constant pull of materialism.
What's truly compelling about Socrates, I think, is his vision of the ideal man.
Okay.
This is someone who makes decisions driven purely by what's right, by honesty and justice, completely unswayed by personal consequences.
So even if it affects your job or family.
Imagine facing a tough ethical call at work. Maybe it impacts your promotion, maybe even your personal life. But you prioritize what is unequivocally just. That's the Socratic ideal right there.
So it's not just about knowing what's right, but actually doing it, even when it's incredibly difficult.
Precisely. And this leads us straight into Socratic intellectualism, this powerful idea that true wisdom isn't just about accumulating facts.
Right. It's more than that.
It's knowledge deeply integrated with your values. And for Socrates, wrongdoing is ignorance. It suggests that if you truly understood the good, you'd always choose it.
Interesting. That if you really knew.
Yeah. Which directly underpins the importance of critical thinking.
Yeah.
Socrates was constantly challenging people, wasn't he?
Oh, definitely. Question assumptions, analyze dilemmas deeply.
Make holistic, evidence-based decisions. He certainly wasn't looking for yes men.
No. And that approach is absolutely vital for anyone navigating complex issues today, wouldn't you say? Especially maybe in public service.
For sure. Our sources even mention the 2019 unexamined life question, reminding us how this ancient idea still resonates.
Right.
Think about complex negotiations, like, say, trade talks between the U.S. and India. Truly effective outcomes often depend on both sides critically examining their own biases and assumptions first.
That makes sense. And speaking of continuous improvement, Socrates was also big on lifelong learning.
Not just for academics.
No, it's about staying adaptable, constantly upskilling. Our sources highlight how this applies directly to public servants, too.
Yeah, linking it to modern concepts like mid-career training programs or India's Mission Karmayogi's IGOT portal.
Which is all about continuous development for government officials, right?
Exactly. So for you, the listener, the real essence of Socrates' teaching might be this. Your deepest self-awareness and your commitment to continuous learning. They are perhaps your most reliable ethical compasses.
Wow. And he has some great quotes on this.
He did. Like, true wisdom comes to each of us when we realize how little we understand about life, ourselves, and the world around us.
Oof, humbling.
And also, I cannot teach anybody anything. I can only make them think.
Powerful stuff. Okay, so building on Socrates' intense focus on, individual integrity, his most famous student, Plato, took those ideas and sort of applied them to the larger society.
That's a good way to put it. He really dug into the concept of justice, focusing on giving every person and every part of society their rightful due.
Their rightful due, okay.
And he believed that truth lies beyond appearances, which is a huge insight for navigating complex situations, isn't it?
Absolutely. It means you have to dig deep, uncover the real issues.
Yeah, not just react to what's on the surface. This goes hand in hand with his emphasis on the role of reason.
Similar to Socratic critical thinking.
Very similar, championing holistic, evidence-based decisions rather than being swayed by, emotion or superficiality.
Got it. And Plato also explored eudaimonia, that idea of human flourishing.
He did. He saw it as being achieved through a purposeful, virtue-driven life. Now, Aristotle really developed the idea later,
Right.
but Plato certainly laid some essential groundwork there.
And then there's Plato's iconic concept, the philosopher king.
Yeah.
Not just some abstract ideal, right? It's more like a model for truly enlightened leadership.
Exactly. A wise, just, virtuous leader who always prioritizes ethics and the public good over any personal gains. It's a really powerful benchmark for anyone in leadership today.
Especially in public service, you could argue.
Definitely. And, to highlight the ethical tension in leadership, it's useful to briefly contrast Plato's vision with, say, Machiavelli's view.
Oh, yeah, the ends justify the means guy.
Right. Plato provides a powerful counterpoint. For instance, our sources mention Turkey's actions against India, maybe referring to specific diplomatic issues as an example, where perhaps a failure to apply reason and these ideal leadership principles might have led to, less than ideal outcomes.
So the big idea from Plato is really the transformative power of reason and integrity in leadership.
I think so. And some of his quotes just resonate so deeply still, and the first and greatest victory is to conquer yourself. To be conquered by yourself is one of all things most shameful and vile.
Wow, that hits hard.
And this one, too, which speaks to so much of our modern anxiety. There are two things a person should never be angry at: what they can help and what they cannot.
So true. Okay, let's turn to Aristotle then. He famously brought philosophy down to earth, right, with his focus on practical ethics.
Yeah, he wasn't just about abstract theories. He was all about applying wisdom to real-world situations.
Yeah.
Helping us make better choices in our, daily lives.
And his most famous contribution for navigating dilemmas has got to be the golden mean.
Absolutely. A cornerstone.
It's all about finding that sensible middle path between extremes, emphasizing temperance and reasonableness.
Like courage being between foolishness and cowardice.
Right. But you could apply it to almost anything, couldn't you? Like even social media use. The mean might be engaging thoughtfully, avoiding both, say, aggressive oversharing and complete disengagement.
That's a great modern example. It's a vital tool for resolving ethical dilemmas, helping you avoid those overreactions or underreactions.
Yeah. And Aristotle also made this crucial distinction, didn't he, between a good citizen and a good man.
He did. A good citizen just obeys the laws of the state. But a good man, acts ethically.
Even if that means sometimes challenging the state.
Exactly. Our sources reference the example of Meta Patkar, the Indian social activist. Like many human rights advocates, she's championed ethical principles even when her actions meant going against government policies.
Interesting. And he even looked into the 7 causes of human action.
Yeah, chance, nature, compulsion, habit, reason, passion, desire. It's quite a brilliant framework, actually.
For understanding motivations.
Precisely. Understanding the underlying motivations behind all sorts of societal issues, from gender inequality to, say, complex corporate decisions, it helps us dissect why people or groups behave the way they do.
Okay. So the listener's key insight from Aristotle is really how to find balanced, practical, effective solutions in ethical challenges.
I think that's fair. And remember his words. You will never do anything in this world without courage. It is the greatest quality of mind next to honor.
Powerful.
Our sources also highlight the Kayet University suicide case, a tragic situation, as a powerful example where applying justice, both distributive and substantive, becomes critical in these complex real-world situations.
Right, achieving genuine fairness. Okay, moving beyond individual integrity and even local society, let's shift focus a bit. How do we navigate complex societies and conflicts on a maybe grander scale?
Well, a towering figure of the 20th century comes to mind immediately, Martin Luther King Jr.
Ah, yes.
His whole vision was about living in and changing the world in conflict through the profound power of peaceful conflict resolution.
And what's truly profound about MLK's message, I think, is that idea that refusal to retaliate to violence isn't cowardice.
Absolutely. That's a key point. Our sources use the example of Pakistan's cross-border terror and India's evolving response to illustrate this.
How so?
Well, showing how what might appear to be a lack of immediate retaliation can actually be a principled, strategic, and often more powerful stance. It's not weakness, it's a conscious choice.
Got it. A choice, not an absence of one.
Mm.
And he powerfully emphasized the moral imperative to stand against injustice.
Always. Whether racial injustice, economic disparity, any form of systemic oppression. And MLK also stressed that means cannot be justified by ends.
Which aligns so strongly with Gandhian principles.
Exactly. And offers a stark contrast to Machiavelli's philosophy, which often suggests the opposite.
He also really believed in things like dignity, respect for diversities.
Yeah, linguistic, racial, gender, social responsibility, collaboration, all essential for ending societal divisions. This concept of the oneness of being is crucial.
And we see its application, or the need for it, everywhere.
We do. In issues like India, potentially acting as a mediator in the Russia-Ukraine war, advocating for peace.
Or the ongoing challenges of linguistic identity in diverse places.
And the critical need to address communal violence by fostering unity.
So for you, the listener, the ethical power of nonviolence and collective action against injustice, that's the key takeaway from MLK.
I'd say so. And his quotes are just so poignant, so timeless. In the end, we will remember not the words of our enemies, but the silence of our friends.
Chilling.
And our lives began to end the day we become silent about things that matter.
Wow. Okay. Now let's maybe turn east for a moment to Confucius. His wisdom seems deeply relevant to ethical leadership and social harmony.
Very much so. His core principle was essentially to rule by compassion rather than threat.
A very different model of leadership.
Completely. It stands in stark contrast to, authoritarian figures throughout history. He believed that a virtuous man cares for humanity.
Which implies leaders, especially public servants, should be what? Responsive? Perceptive?
Exactly. Responsive and perceptive to societal needs. Implementing policy with a genuine bottom-up approach. Truly understanding what people on the ground need, not just dictating from the top.
And Confucius also taught that educated leaders should set positive examples.
Yes, focusing on ethical means, respecting hierarchy, but crucially, and this links back to Socrates, avoiding being a yes man, meaning following only lawful orders and having the moral courage to speak out against wrongdoing. He even outlined 5 virtues of a good official.
Oh yeah, like what?
Compassion, care for humanity, setting positive examples, focusing on ethical means, respecting hierarchy, etiquette, honesty, righteousness, strong family values, incredibly applicable to civil service case studies,
Definitely. And interestingly, he also highlighted the need for morals and control in society for order.
He did, suggesting this sometimes justifies strong state authority for the greater good. Now, our sources use some controversial examples here.
Okay.
Like AFSPA in India, the Armed Forces Special Powers Act, or the CAA, the Citizenship Amendment Act.
Right. These are hotly debated.
Extremely.
Yeah.
And it's important to stress, we're not endorsing these policies here at all. We're simply examining how a philosophical principle like Confucius's view on order might be used to understand the rationale presented for them, maintaining law and order, social cohesion, from that specific perspective.
Understood. A crucial distinction.
Crucially, though, Confucius also emphasized human relations, collegiality, trust, collaboration, and leadership for common good and social harmony in resolving societal divisions.
Which seems desperately needed sometimes.
Absolutely. Events like the Manipur unrest, the use of AFSPA there, or specific instances of violence like in Murshidabad, they just highlight the desperate need for empathy, mutual respect, and truly benevolent leadership to foster harmony.
So the transformative power of benevolent leadership and collective responsibility, that's the big idea from Confucius.
I think that's a good summary. And his famous quote really drives home the importance of practical application. I hear and I forget. I see and I remember. I do and I understand.
It's all about putting wisdom into action. Okay, next up, let's dive into a really fundamental tension in political philosophy, looking at 2 giants, Thomas Hobbes and Jean-Jacques Rousseau.
Ah, the classic contrast. Hobbes argued for the absolute necessity of a central authority to control self-interested man.
Why? What was his view of human nature?
He believed that human nature, left unchecked, prioritizes self-preservation above all else. And without a strong hand, this inevitably leads to chaos, his famous war of all against all.
Right. Life being nasty, brutish, and short.
Exactly. And this is where Hobbes's social contract comes in. People willingly giving up some of their individual rights to a powerful sovereign.
In exchange for order, stability, security.
Precisely. Hobbes's perspective also introduces a form of moral relativism, suggesting that, ultimately, the state's laws define morality.
And how might that apply today?
Well, our sources cite some controversial policies, again, India's GST, the bulldozer actions, the proposed Uniform Civil Code,
Okay.
and suggest that these can be understood purely from a Hobbesian perspective, mind you, as the state asserting its authority to maintain order and uniformity, defining what's right for societal stability.
Got it. A specific lens. Now, Rousseau offered a stark contrast, right?
Completely. Rousseau saw the natural man as inherently uncorrupted, free, equal, with fewer desires. He argued its artificiality and the corrupting influence of society that perverts humanity.
So society makes us bad.
In his view, yes, which led him to the concept of the general will.
Explain that a bit.
It prioritizes the collective interest of the community over individual desires. Rousseau saw this as crucial for resolving ethical dilemmas, pushing us to combat corruption driven by self-serving, artificial desires created by society.
So he might argue that many modern crises stem from, what? A wrong idea of the good life.
Exactly, a narrow perception of good life, caused by societal corruption, moving us away from our natural, uncorrupted state.
Okay, so the key takeaway here is understanding that fundamental tension. Individual freedom versus societal order.
And how the concept of the general will can help us seek a balance. You know, think about how Hobbes's perspective might be used to justify regulatory bodies like SEBI in India controlling financial influencers to protect market stability.
Right, controlling self-interest for order.
Or deploying central forces in conflict zones like Manipur, an application of Hobbesian ethics for maintaining stability.
Okay, that makes sense. Now, let's explore Emil Durkheim, a foundational sociologist. His concept of collective conscience sounds really powerful.
It is incredibly powerful. It refers to the shared beliefs, values, solidarity, that sense of community that binds a society together.
And how does that help with ethics?
Our sources highlight how this powerful concept serves as a key in resolving ethical dilemmas and promoting societal well-being, basically by fostering a sense of shared responsibility and shared understanding of what's right.
He also talked about anomie theory, right? What's that?
Yeah, briefly. Anomie theory explains how rapid social change can lead to a sense of normlessness if societal norms don't adapt gradually.
Can you give an example?
Think about the intense public discussions around evolving social norms, like maybe the broader acceptance of LGBT rights. If these changes happen really quickly without society adapting its shared values, it can create widespread disorientation, a feeling that the old rules don't apply but new ones aren't clear yet. A breakdown of social cohesion.
Okay, normlessness.
And Durkheim, much like Adam Smith actually, also discussed the division of labor.
But from a sociological angle.
Right. He saw it as leading to specialization, interdependence, and cooperation, all absolutely necessary for complex tasks like, say, effective policy implementation, especially avoiding working in silos.
So specialization requires cooperation.
Exactly. It highlights that while roles become specialized in modern society, mutual cooperation among those specialized roles is essential for the overall function and ethical conduct of society.
So, the profound impact of shared values and community on individual morality and societal health, that's the big idea from Durkheim.
I think so. His concept of collective conscience is vital for addressing divisive issues like communalism or linguistic conflicts, reminding us of what truly binds us together.
He had some great quotes, too.
He did. Man is a moral being only because he lives in society. And society is not a mere sum of individuals, rather the system formed by their association.
Really makes you think about the power of the collective. Okay, moving into maybe more foundational principles for modern ethical challenges, let's turn to John Locke.
Ah, Locke. Foundational indeed. His groundbreaking concept of natural rights, life, liberty, and property is the direct precursor to our modern understanding of universal human rights.
And these rights are incredibly relevant today, aren't they?
Absolutely. Take freedom of speech. It plays out constantly in contemporary issues. Crises around online streaming platforms, government media bans, even complex patent disputes.
Right.
Our sources specifically mention a stance from ANI, the Indian news agency, that privacy violation is not freedom of speech, highlighting that tension, those boundaries.
And those bulldozer actions you mentioned earlier.
They often bring up significant ethical implications related to the rights to property and liberty under Locke's framework.
Locke's emphasis on individual liberty and self-determination is also key.
Hugely. We see this in debates around women's reproductive rights, for instance, from international conferences like the Beijing Conference to ongoing issues surrounding surrogacy and abortion access.
And it connects to other concepts, too.
Definitely. Directly to concepts like Mahatma Gandhi's Swaraj, meaning self-rule or self-governance, or Amartya Sen's capability approach, which focuses on what people are actually able to do and be.
And Locke also stressed public accountability for government.
Yes, through mechanisms like social audits and Jan Bagadari, which basically means active citizen participation in governance.
Making government answerable.
Exactly. And the separation of powers, a principle designed to ensure checks and balances and prevent abuse of power. That's another Lockean idea that's constantly relevant.
Right, like recent discussions involving the PM and CJI in India, referencing that 1997 Supreme Court document on judicial independence.
Precisely.
So the main takeaway from Locke is how these foundational rights continue to shape our debates on liberty and governance today, impacting our daily lives.
I think so. Think about the Indian Supreme Court ruling that digital access for persons with disabilities is an extension of the rights to life and liberty, a perfect modern application of a centuries-old idea.
Wow, as Locke himself put it.
I have always thought the actions of man are the best interpreters of their thoughts.
Actions speak louder than words. Okay, let's briefly touch on Adam Smith again. We know him as the father of modern economics, but his division of labor concept has ethical dimensions too.
It does, especially when you extend it beyond just economic efficiency into ethical work culture. It highlights how specialization and interdependence among different societal stakeholders, teachers, leaders, parents, reformers, can contribute to the common good when they work together ethically.
So even economic principles can illuminate ethical approaches to collaboration.
Yeah, it's about how different parts of society, each doing their specialized role well and cooperatively, can lead to a better overall outcome, ethically speaking, through that mutual cooperation.
Okay, this is great. Let's try to bring all these thinkers together now and tackle some real-world deep dive issues. How do they equip us for, say, ethical dilemma resolution?
Well, we now have a truly powerful toolkit, don't we? We've got reason from Socrates and Plato, wisdom from Socrates, justice from Plato.
The golden mean from Aristotle.
Strong authority as an option from Hobbes, the general will from Rousseau, and that collective conscience from Durkheim.
Yeah.
Lots of tools.
And a prime example of applied ethics where these ideas really seem to clash is intellectual property rights, or IPR.
Oh, definitely. It brings up fascinating ethical tensions. On one hand, you absolutely need incentives for innovation, right? Patents, copyrights encourage creators.
Sure.
But on the other hand,
You have to balance that with affordability and access to essential goods. We saw this vividly with the Covaxin patent issues during the pandemic.
yeah, should essential medicines be restricted by private patents when lives are literally at stake? Big question.
Huge. And there are also negative practices that raise ethical flags, like patent trolls.
Those are companies that just buy patents to sue people.
Exactly. They acquire patents not to innovate, but simply to sue others for infringement. And evergreening, where drug companies extend patents through minor tweaks.
Keeping prices high longer.
Right. And then there's the complex conflict between piracy and aspects of freedom of speech. Our sources mention ANI again, stating that privacy violation is not freedom of speech when discussing digital content boundaries. So what are the solutions here, ethically speaking? How do these principles help?
Well, our sources suggest that companies and policymakers should really prioritize the public interests,
Okay.
adhere to social ethics, foster communitarianism that focus on the community's good, integrate corporate social responsibility, CSR, meaningfully.
Not just as PR.
Right. Seek mutual benefit in dealings and ultimately try to align with the general will of society, as Rousseau might put it.
So this IPR discussion is really a tangible example of how these, abstract philosophical concepts play out in very real-world policy and corporate ethics debates.
Absolutely. It shows how relevant these thinkers still are to debates about what's right and just in our globalized economy.
Okay, and now for our final application. Let's use that compelling case study. The vice principal's dilemma. Can you set the scene again?
Sure. Imagine this. You are the vice principal of a degree college in a pretty average town. The principal just retired. You're the front runner for the job. Big opportunity.
Okay, sounds good so far.
But then during the annual exams, bam, a flying squad catches 2 students red-handed, cheating brazenly. And the shocking twist. A senior lecturer, someone very close to the college management, was actively helping them cheat.
No. Who are the students?
One is the son of a powerful local politician, the kind who helped the college get its affiliation. The other, son of a wealthy businessman who donates huge amounts to the institution. Big connections.
Wow. Okay, the plot thickens.
Then the college management pulls you aside. They tell you to resolve the issue quietly.
Oh.
They warn that any public scandal will wreck the college's image, and they stress how vital that politician and businessman are. And then comes the kicker.
Let me guess. Your promotion.
Bingo. A not-so-subtle hint that your promotion might just depend on how discreetly you handle this whole mess. Meanwhile, the student union gets wind of it and starts protesting loudly, demanding strict action.
What a nightmare. Okay, the ethical issues here are just sprawling, aren't they?
Completely interconnected. Academic integrity, professional ethics, blatant conflict of interest, personal gain versus public good, honesty versus expediency.
Short-term gain versus long-term pain. The college's reputation.
Exactly. All of this, as our sources point out, directly violates Socrates' ideal life and Plato's good life, where virtues like justice and truth are supposed to be paramount.
Okay, let's analyze the options the VP faces. Option 1.
Option 1, cover up. Just sweep it under the rug. This might appeal because of that Hobbesian self-preservation instinct, right?
Fear of consequences, fear of damaging the college image, fear of losing the promotion.
It's the path of least resistance for short-term gain, avoids immediate discomfort.
Okay, option 2.
Option 2, report and pass on. So you report the incident to the flying squad formally, but then you step back. Let them handle everything.
That sounds more ethical, maybe.
It seems ethical on the surface, yeah. But it's actually quite a passive approach. You're absolving yourself of further leadership, of upholding the institution's values. You're not actively ensuring justice is done.
Right, just ticking a box. So option 3.
Option 3, and arguably the optimal path, proactive collaboration. This means not only reporting the incident to the proper authorities, but actively working with the flying squad, providing full cooperation, all the evidence you have.
Getting involved.
Yes. This choice really embodies that Socratic ideal man we talked about earlier, prioritizing virtue, academic integrity, the long-term well-being of the institution.
Even if it means facing uncomfortable personal or institutional consequences, like maybe losing the promotion.
Exactly, even then.
So the best course of action for our vice principal is pretty clear then.
It seems so. They should not only report it, but proactively work with the squad, ensuring a thorough investigation. And crucially, they need to address the student concerns head-on. Reassure them that the institution is committed to academic values and justice.
Setting an example.
Setting a powerful example of ethical leadership in a really high-stakes dilemma, upholding the very principles we've been discussing today.
Wow. Yeah, that practical demonstration really shows how these principles, they're not just dusty old ideas. They can actually be applied to navigate these complex real-world situations.
Transforms abstract philosophy into actionable wisdom, hopefully.
And there you have it, everyone. This deep dive has, I hope, shown how these ancient philosophies provide a remarkably robust framework for understanding and addressing the contemporary ethical challenges we face every single day.
From Socrates' profound emphasis on self-awareness and critical thinking, all the way to Durkheim's insights into collective conscience or Rousseau's general will.
These ideas aren't just academic, are they? They feel like powerful, practical tools for living a more purposeful, principled, and, ethical life.
We really hope so. And we truly encourage you, the listener, to actively try and apply these principles in your own life. Maybe the next time you're faced with a tough decision, just pause for a second.
Reflect a bit.
Yeah, reflect and ask yourself, okay, so what does this all mean for me? How can I use some of this wisdom right now to make a better choice?
That's a great challenge. And as we close out, here's maybe one final thought for you to ponder, something that kind of builds on everything we've discussed today.
Okay.
If the perfecting of oneself, that Socratic idea, really is the fundamental base of all progress in moral development, what one habit or action will you start, or maybe stop, today to begin that journey toward a more virtuous self?
Something to think about.